All right, welcome to Revolution. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. We got a great interview coming up for you guys in a minute, which I'm really looking forward to. But first, I'm going to do a story for you guys. This show is about revolution. Why do we need one, a political one? Because how corrupt the system is and how we're slipping into authoritarianism. Unfortunately, this is a good example of it. So President Trump is flying back from China, and he gets into a confrontation with a New York Times reporter, David Sanger, and he says some truly outrageous things. Let's watch it first.
Accused me of repeating the bombing. You did it for 38 days.
No, we did.
And you did not get the political changes in Iran.
No, I had a total military victory. But the fake news, guys like you write incorrectly. You're a fake guy, and guys like you write about it incorrectly. We had a total military victory. I actually think it's sort of treasonous what you write, but you and the New York Times and CNN, I would say, are the worst.
On another war.
You should know better, Dan. You're a professional. You know better. Your editors tell you what to write, and you write it. You should be ashamed of it.
This is another war. Is there any
I actually think it's treason. When you write like they're doing well militarily and they have no Navy, no Air Force, no anti-anything. By the way, we knocked out 85% of their manufacturing for the missiles. We knocked out everything. We haven't knocked out other than one bridge, and we did because they misbehaved. But we have bridges we could knock out. We could knock out their bridges and their electrical capacity within 2 days. We could knock out the whole thing.
We had total military victory, and we knocked out, quote, everything. So I'm going to give you the receipts on that in a second, but it doesn't get any more ironic than Trump in the middle of saying that, looking at a guy going, "You're a fake guy." No, literally everything you just said is fake. Now look, as anyone who watches Young Turks knows, I got no love for the New York Times. And so I can show you all the things that they do wrong. But when you go at them, you should have some receipts. And obviously in this case, Donald Trump doesn't. But most importantly, guys, it is not treasonous to write about the administration, to criticize the administration, to state facts about how a war is actually going. In fact, that's what journalists are supposed to do. This is rare good reporting by the New York Times in that issue. So, in fact, what did actually happen, as the New York Times reported earlier, most alarming to some senior officials is evidence that Iran has restored operational access to 30 of the 33 missile sites it maintains along the Strait of Hormuz, which could threaten American warships and oil tankers transiting the narrow waterways. We knocked out everything. By everything, if you mean 3 out of 33 missile launchers at the most important place now literally in the world, the Strait of Hormuz, yeah. There is a fake guy in that conversation, and it ain't the New York Times reporter in that case. But wait, it's way worse than that. They explain further, Iran still fields about 70% of its mobile launchers across the country and has retained roughly 70% of its pre-war missile stockpile, according to the assessments. That stockpile encompasses both ballistic missiles and a smaller supply of cruise missiles, which can be used against shorter range targets on land or at sea. And by the way, where are they getting this information? Is it the New York Times went and looked around Iran and tried to figure out? No, it's from our intelligence, American intelligence. So Donald Trump is actively lying to you. He knows this intelligence as well. Although on the other hand, maybe he doesn't, because they do show and tell with him since he's a child. And in the mornings they show him bombing videos and they go, "Look at all the things we destroyed in Iran. Look, we destroyed a hospital and a school. You're doing great, Donald Trump. And we destroyed their whole Navy and military and Air Force, Donald Trump." You could tell everyone that. And he's like, "Oh, Petey boy, we got him, didn't we, Petey boy?" And then the stock market doesn't go down. He's like, "No, the market's up and we destroyed everything. We should restart the war." Yeah, great idea. Let's see how that turns out, because I'm afraid we're about to. Lastly here, based on information from multiple collection streams, including satellite imagery and other surveillance technologies, Iran has regained access to roughly 90% of its underground missile storage and launch facilities nationwide, which are now assessed to be partially or fully operational, the people with knowledge of the assessment said. Now, I know that Donald Trump hides his grades from college and from high school. Who cares what you got in high school? But maybe because he's so bad at math, He's like, oh, we got 10% of their capabilities. We got everything. 10 equals 100, doesn't it? You just put a 0 at the end and the 0 isn't worth it. 100. No, you got 10%. So how many planes and ships you destroyed are not that relevant, because that's not what's blocking the Strait of Hormuz. The missiles, the missile launchers, and their stockpiles are what is blocking the Strait of Hormuz. And I don't know if Donald Trump is just too dense to understand that, or he understands that and is a pathological liar. Could be both, but it's not healthy to have a president of the United States who is completely detached from reality while we're in the middle of a war, because he might be convinced to restart that disastrous war, thinking that we're winning when we are doing anything but win in that disastrous war that Israel has ordered for us. All right, so now you know the truth about that. Let's move on to the interview that we've got. Joining me now is David Spivak. He'll tell me if I pronounce that right in a second. He's a digital creator, and he's got his account's called David Says Stuff. It's on YouTube, Instagram, X. So David, welcome, brother.
Welcome, thank you very much for having me. This is a very exciting time.
Okay, no problem, great to have you here. So did I get the pronunciation of the last name right?
You nailed it, actually. Very few people nail that name, but you nailed it.
Okay, that is rare.
So I'm happy about that.
Okay.
My dad would be proud.
Okay, well, would he? Let's find out. With at least
well, not about me being here, but at least getting the name correctly.
Okay.
Very true.
Yeah, so David, you talk about how you grew up in insular Zionist environment on Long Island. You're now in the hipster capital of the world in Brooklyn, of course, so that might have affected how you view things. But no, seriously, tell me about how it was growing up like that and what your view of the war is today, and then we'll dive into more details.
So growing up, I grew up in a very Jewish community with like a sprinkle of Italian people. So the general idea was school, Hebrew school, home. Everything Jewish, everything, like if you know anything about Long Island, you know you are insulated in a very Jewish community. And then factoring in Hebrew school and factoring in everything being Jewish, that was my life.
Yeah, so look, Long Island equals New Jersey. No two set of people are closer in culture than people who grew up in New Jersey and Long Island. I grew up with basically three subsets of people. Like, were there Latinos, blacks, blah, blah, blah? Yeah, whites, sure. But really, it was Jews, Italians, and other immigrants, right? So
100%.
Yeah, and I grew up in East Brunswick, particularly Jewish town. We were so Jewish. They threw bagels at our football team, the opposing teams did, because I grew up in the 80s and apparently that was allowed.
Weird, but yes.
It's just super weird, okay. But I mean, I love telling that story because I was on the football team and yeah, we were a heavily Jewish school, but out of the 60 some odd guys on the football team, only 4 were Jewish.
That makes, you know what's funny? That's kind of the vibe in my high school football team. I actually played high school football. I was terrible, but I believe it was only a few Jewish people and it was almost the entire Italian group that was in the team. That was on the team.
Oh yeah, we had a bunch of Italians on the team, that's for sure. Okay, but you know, the only guy who made it into the NFL, Jewish, Josh Miller. So
damn.
Yeah, there you go, representing. Okay,
that's what's up.
Okay, so you grow up in an environment like that, you know, no reason not to be super proud of who you are and your community, etc. So now, fast forward to today, we're in a little bit different situation. So, so what are your thoughts about what's happened in Gaza and beyond in the last 3 years?
So what's happening in Gaza is absolutely disgusting. There is a genocide going on, and it's very hard to, as a Jewish person, it's very hard to understand how this can be done in my name. And that's the part that got me started in this whole journey, is Israel tries to conflate Judaism with the atrocities that they're committing, and then factor in I'm American and I'm paying for it. So that was very difficult, a very difficult pill to swallow.
Yeah, for sure. So look, I want to get into the battle within the Jewish community in a second, but let's stay on Gaza and all that. Because David, you said something there that I've been kind of angry about the whole time, but I'm not Jewish, so I'm not allowed to say this or whatever. But but I say it anyway because I don't give a damn what I'm allowed to or not allowed to say. Yeah, which is that, guys, stop saying that you represent all Jews, because it's hurting my Jewish friends, family, and everyone else, because it feels like they're using Jewish people as human shields. Like, when reality is every government does terrible things. So like the Turkish government, are they angels? No, they've done terrible things, right? American government, same thing. Russian government, same thing, right? So, but when the Turkish government does something, I don't want them going, no, you're not allowed to criticize us because we did that genocide or we did that on behalf of all Turks. No, no, no. But with Israel, it seems like no one in mainstream media even challenges that idea. In fact, they seem to double down on it and reinforce it. So how harmful do you think that is?
I think it is extremely harmful because they're conflating an ideology and an identity together. So that makes everything that Israel does, a Jewish person has to answer for it, according to Israel. So I find myself, when I'm talking with people who aren't Jewish, they believe that every single Jewish person has such a blind allegiance to Israel, and I have to unwind that thought process, and that's entirely because of Israel.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's just a reality. And unfortunately, a lot of folks think in tribal ways. And so sometimes Israel supporters will say, oh yeah, Turkey did this. And I'm like, yeah, they did. And then what happened? Like, why is that my issue?
It makes no sense.
Like, the Turkish government doesn't call me before they do a false flag operation in Syria, which they've done, right? And go, Cenk, we're thinking of doing this. We're gonna want to run it by you. Did the Israeli government call you and go, hey, we're thinking of killing people in food lines? David, how do you vote, right?
Well, first off, I wish they do that. I wish they did call me. I mean, that would be nice. I would be like, please don't do that. That is bad. So, but no, they do not call me, and it's disgusting. I mean, even just your segment before, you were commenting on the president of the United States. You are in America. That is okay. But for some reason, you can't comment on the prime minister of Israel. And it's just ludicrous.
Yeah, and look, David, it's important, honestly, for people in that category to say something. And I say category because if it was about the Turkish government and its supporters are brazenly using like false charges of racism against Turks to carry out their war crimes, etc., it's incumbent, I think, on Turks to say, hey, no, they don't represent us, right? And so, because otherwise, like you said, people are going to think that they represent you, that you were aiding and abetting that when you're totally opposed to it, and it's so fundamentally unfair. Now, look, to us, you and I, that's super obvious, right? But obviously, it's not as clear to a lot of people in our community, and I say our community because I could use the same exact example in the Turkish community. They go, no, the Armenian genocide didn't happen, and if you say that it happened, then you're a bad guy and you're betraying us, etc. So how much of that have you gotten first? Let's start there.
So when I started this journey, I dealt with basically losing my parents, losing all of my family, and just a little history. I don't have family in the United States. They're all in Israel. So with the exception of my parents and one aunt, everyone is there. No one talks to me anymore. And my parents have come back simply because I have a son and they wanted to be in his life. But ultimately, I can't really have a political conversation with them because at the end of the day, when your ideology and your identity become the same, if somebody says something about Israel, you are going to fight tooth and nail to protect your identity and your ideology. And that's why so many Jewish people who are Zionists feel that when you criticize Israel, you're criticizing their identity and ideology, if that makes sense.
It does. I'll add something to it and see if you agree with it. So I have had some folks who are Turkish Americans that are close to me make it clear that in their worldview, like going against your own tribe and is a bigger moral crime or moral problem than the underlying deed we're talking about. So like a genocide, okay, not great. But saying we did a genocide, that's a huge problem of morality. And for me, growing up in America, I'm an American like you, right? So
yes,
I don't get that. And it bothers me. Like, what do you mean it's a moral problem to be honest about your own background, people from your own background or a country from your background? That feels crazy to me. But I wanted to see if you have the same experience, because I think that they genuinely believe it. They genuinely think that what we're doing is immoral. You see what I'm saying?
So they do. I get a lot of messages from, listen, I feel like the vibe that I get from people is, if I do get an extreme Zionist, yes, there are some that are very threatening and believe exactly what you just said. But some actually ask me a lot of questions of how I got here. The problem is that they don't feel comfortable speaking about it publicly. And that's the big problem that we have, because of exactly what you just said. They feel like going against their community is as bad as a genocide. And that's the wall that we have to break down. And that's honestly the genesis behind why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I'm trying to show them that it's okay to say Israel is doing the wrong thing. It's a toxic, their entire being right now in terms of their ideology in Israel is toxic. It is. And it's okay to say that, because ultimately you are saving Judaism. And if your ideology is to protect Israel, well, then you're protecting Israel too. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. And Israel could be endangering Judaism. I mean, I used to like kid around as Bill Maher did about the Orthodox guys who were against Israel. Oh, it's funny, Orthodox rabbis against Israel. Turns out not funny, they were right. They're like, the nationalism is going to destroy the religion. And that's a concern in every religion when you do nationalism. And it turns out that they were pretty prescient. To your main point, David, there, 63% of Jewish Americans are against the current Israeli government. But you would never know it, because almost all the Jewish American leaders are like, no, not only are we 100% in favor of it, we will call anyone who's opposed to it an anti-Semite, and then we'll sick our dogs on them and try to ruin their lives and their careers, the Canary Mission and all this nonsense, etc. And so the American people have no idea the great majority of Jewish Americans are actually against the Netanyahu government. I don't know that that's ever been stated in mainstream media, because they're not trying to protect Jewish people, they're trying to protect Israel. Those are two completely different things. But that's
and I'll also say, just to not interrupt, but
no, go ahead.
Also the dogs, as you call them, because that's what they are, they're also the loudest. So you have these guys online who are toting the flag and saying all these crazy things online, and obviously at protests. And they're the people who are being noticed, like Israel pride, and we have to protect Israel. And that's a danger too, because you're not letting the world see people like me, or there's people like Jewish Voices for Peace. If not now, people don't even know these organizations exist. I am constantly telling people, and they're shocked, because always the loudest voices are the minority. So I wanted to add that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I run into a number of folks from Jewish Voices for Peace say that they get targeted by the Canary Missions and the StopAntisemitism.com. And people try to get them fired from their jobs, and they get called anti-Semites. And they're like, we're Jewish. It doesn't make any sense at all. What do you, like, this is madness, right? So now, David, you got the 63% on one side. Then you've got the folks who show up in front of the New York Times headquarters during this giant protest. How dare you say things that are true about Israel, right?
Ridiculous.
And Ben Rhodes made a good point. So he's a guy I worked with in the Obama administration, a really smart, brilliant guy. And I don't say that a lot about people in politics. And Ben was like, if we could just show this kind of outrage at the things that the New York Times reported about, like how badly Israel is treating the detainees and the sexual assaults and the rapes that are going on there. Why aren't we outraged about that instead of the New York Times covering that? The coverage isn't the problem, the crime is the problem, right? So, but here, as you said, they're very loud, very visible, right? The 63% are the silent majority. So then that leads me to asking you. Now, look, we know the numbers, we just stated them, but I'm gonna ask you your experience. How big is this kind of, for lack of a better phrase, civil war within the community? And like, is the pro-Israel side still super dominant? And even if it's 63% that have a problem with this government, they're not fighting back much? Or I don't have visibility internally in the community. Obviously, you can't speak for the whole community. I'm just asking what your experience is.
So my experience is that obviously the loudest voices are the ones that were in front of the New York Times. I think the big problem is that people have a misconception about the Jewish community as a whole. I grew up in an entirely Jewish community. So there were a segment of the population who are Israel, like the people in front of the New York Times. But then there is a large segment of the people there that went to Hebrew school that know Israel is like this safe haven for Jews, but don't really have any connection to Israel other than knowing these things. If you ask them something about Israel, they would be, oh, I didn't know that, or my point is they're easily swayed. And you wouldn't know that that segment of the population exists because the loudest voices are the strongest. So I don't want to give a pass to all of those people who are not political because there is a genocide going on and they should be political. But I will say that they don't really know what's going on. And if I had to put it in percentages, I would say it's a solid 45% of Jewish people who have no idea what's going on. And I'm basing that on my friend group. Then there's about, I'd say about 45% who are deeply aligned with Israeli politics and the atrocities that they're committing. And then there's everybody else. And I'm in that category. I wish that 45% would align with us, but they just don't care about politics. And that deeply saddens me because of what's happening in our name. And that's ultimately the genesis behind what I'm doing, is to get those people to join us so that we can work together to end the Israeli apartheid system.
Yeah, so to the 45% who just don't know and are kind of avoiding the topic, again, I'll run an example from the Turkish community by you and see if it's similar. So tons of people, more than 45% among Turkish Americans for sure, don't know a single thing about the Armenian genocide, right? They don't know any of the facts one direction or another, right? But when you talk about how it is true, this is what they'll do, not literally, but symbolically. La 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 la, I can't hear you, right? Because they don't want to know. They don't want to know that we were wrong, right? So is that similar to what you're experiencing?
Yes, because their identity is tied to Israel. So even that 45% that doesn't care, they still went through the entire process of Hebrew school. You know, when you go to Hebrew school, what's the first thing you do? You literally say the Israeli anthem. So even if they don't care about Israel, they've been indoctrinated to believe that they should care about Israel. So somewhere back here, they're like, oh, Israel matters to me. But they could be talked off of that if we can engage that community. But then Israel is speaking on behalf of all of us, and that deeply hurts us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So I know this is the toughest one of all, because I've gone behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, and talked to tons of Jewish allies that are in the peace movement, and not in the peace movement, just like, hey, don't do this in our names. This isn't good, right? You know, my co-founder at the Young Turks is Ben Mankiewicz, and Ben's dad, would ask about everything, and that's why it was funny. Is it good for the Jews, right? So the Cardinals win the World Series, he'd decide good for the Jews, okay? The bagel is overburnt at breakfast, bad for the Jews. So this, I feel like Frank would say, and I can't put words in his mouth. I can't. So I'll back that up. I'll say, if I'm in your position, David, not good for the Jews. Like,
no.
And how do they not see that? So, okay, this is the impossible question. How do we get them to see that?
So I will say, just from my personal experience and from I don't know if you know, I've only been doing social media since September. So I have not been doing this for so long. I got kind of jolted into it by doing a post because I was sick of arguing with my family and my friends on a private Facebook account. So I just created a new account on Instagram, did my first post, and then whoop, it went. So when you ask that question, I will answer it like this. The more people that talk, the more likely people will listen. So I get people asking me questions who are extreme Zionists. And some will ask questions in a really nice way, and some obviously are not very nice. But I treat them all the same because I really wholeheartedly believe that when there's a crack to the mainframe, a small little crack to that indoctrination, it's over, because you can't go back when you're seeing all of the atrocities that Israel is committing. And I know this because some of the questions I'm asked are so simple. It's the similar questions that I asked when my indoctrination broke. Why is the death toll so big for the Palestinians and so little for the Israelis? Like little questions like that you can't answer them because they don't make sense. Why is it that 3,000 Palestinians die in Gaza, but 3 die in Israel? And usually it's 3 Palestinian or Israeli Arabs. You can't answer these questions without thinking of more questions. That's why I say you have to continuously talk, you have to continuously get in front of a camera, and you have to answer every single DM that you get, and I do. And that's the point.
Okay, I love that last thing. So look, I've said before that I think the top target of Israeli propaganda in America are Jewish Americans. And what you said there about Hebrew school, I didn't even know. And it's exactly right. Why are you saying the Israeli national anthem, right? I'm not, hating on it. I'm just saying we're in America, and so that it's not. I don't mind people having some sort of like love for Israel in their hearts. I get it. There's a lot of Turkish Americans again that have love for Turkey in their hearts. Bulgarians, Mexicans, etc. I get it, right?
Yeah.
But there's a reason why they're having you say that national anthem. There's a reason why they're constantly lecturing you about Israel. And Israel is a different country, right? We just have to be conscious of that. Anyway, that's a lead up to, though, are they more likely to listen, do you think, David, to fellow Jews? Because, and I don't know the answer to this question. I suspect so, because they look at me and they go, "Oh, no way, you're not Jewish. In fact, you grew up Muslim. I'm not going to listen to a word you're saying." And I'm talking about the Zionist folks here and stuff that we're trying to break through to, including the people in the middle, etc. But, or are they like, "No, you're a self-hater. I hate you even more. I'm not going to listen to you either"?
Well, I will first answer your question with, I don't know if you know, but you are one of the main reasons that I broke my indoctrination. And I will tell you that I was more deeply indoctrinated than the average Jewish person. I was so Zionist that when an Israeli would come to the US and said that they skipped the military, that I would literally shame them to their face. I am so shamed by that fact. I am so Zionist that every single military officer in the IDF carries a gun with my first cousin's name attached to it, because my first cousin is the one who created the gun. I am very Zionist. Well, I was, excuse me, was. You were a big help to me breaking that indoctrination pattern. So first off, thank you for that. So when you say, "Hey, I'm a Muslim and whatever," no, keep doing what you're doing. It goes a long way. Now, in terms of people that are questioning their Zionist journey. I do think that it helps to ask someone like me a question to help them continue that pathway. And that happens a lot. So I think you can help somebody in the long term, but I think I could get somebody there quicker, if that makes sense.
Okay, I get it. Yeah, that does make sense. And look, we all have to do our part and hope for the best. And I would have the same, stance for them as I do for the Marjorie Taylor Greens and the Tucker Carlsons, which is, hey, let's have a conversation. You never know where it's going to lead, right? And you never know where you're going to find agreement. And so I couldn't agree more with you. But no, I didn't know that. So now that you said that, of course, I'm curious, how did I help break your indoctrination?
So, by the way, Anna too. So if she's there, you're a part of this. So in 2006, the Lebanon War, you would be constantly talking about what's happening. And every time I'm watching you speak, this is literally what was happening. I was like, this guy is so anti-Semitic, but what he's saying makes a lot of sense. And it was the death toll. The death toll is what got me to go, why is it that Israel is killing 3,000 Lebanese people and the Hezbollah is killing 3 people? And how do we judge when the war ends? Because Hezbollah is not being destroyed. And you would drill that into my head and drill it into my head. Now, the war ends. And you know how, just like how Israel always was, once there's no war, they're still continuing their atrocities, but the world isn't really paying attention, things quiet down. Then the 2008 Gaza war happened. My mainframe was already cracked. You started commenting on it. I started to remember everything that happened during the Lebanon war, and that ultimately broke my belief that Israel is always right. That is how I basically broke out of indoctrination. I give you and Anna full credit for that. In fact, I told you that during your movie when I saw you at Mad as Hell, and you really were appreciative of that back then. So,
that's amazing, brother. I'm sorry that I forgot that. But that's what happens when you're on the air for approximately 200 years.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. But no, that is how it happened. And then and just so others can know. And then the second phase was basically, I always believe that when you have experience with other people, so like if I'm with a Muslim person or I'm with a Christian person, and when I'm with a black person, a Hispanic person, you start to learn that those people, they're not doing the things that you were taught. So I used to think that I'd have to whisper that I'm Jewish. I would have to whisper the word Israel because the people around me might get angry and attack me. Once I got out of that, it really helped. And my baby mama, she is Iranian. And she is, she's like you, she's not religious, but ultimately Muslim. And I realized that her family embraced me immediately. So that easily broke down the walls of Muslims want to kill me. And this was a wonderful, the first time I met her uncle, I meet him at his house in Potomac, Maryland. And instead of saying hi, like the normal pleasantries, he's like, I need you to get on the roof and clean my gutters. I need some help. And I'm like, okay, this is the guy I can work with. That is when I realized that it was my parents who were projecting their fears. It had nothing to do with everyone else. It had everything to do with us.
Boy, I really couldn't agree with that more because and it's not helpful to tell your kids that everyone hates you, especially when it isn't true, right?
It's not true.
Like give people a chance. And so
absolutely.
Yeah. So all right, together we're gonna break the cycle of hatred. Okay.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you decided to do social media. I love that it's going well. So everybody check out David Spivak. It's David Says Stuff. You can see it on X, you can see it on Instagram and on YouTube. David, much love, brother. Thanks for coming on and telling us that story.
I appreciate it. Say hi to Anna.
I will.
All right.
Okay. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for you. And on Monday, Tom Massey joins us. We'll be back. We'll see you then. Bye.